environment, and this is the second paper in this session. It's a lightning paper by Jenny Coombs from De Montfort, AI for Literature Reviews.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me okay? Am I on? Yeah? Great. So now for something completely different to the first talk. So my name's Jenny. I work at De Montfort University, which is in Leicester, and I manage a team of subject librarians, and part of our role is to deliver training to postgraduate researchers. So this year we trialled for the first time a workshop that I co-delivered with one of our learning developers, which is around AI for literature reviews. So really looking at how we could look at some of the AI tools that are out there to support those researchers in doing that literature review process. So we delivered the session online, and this slide just really gives you the broad structure of the workshop. Obviously, if anybody is really interested in this and wants to talk to me afterwards, I'm really happy to talk in more detail about what we did. But what we started with really was just to try and get some gauge of what the current experience was of the researchers. So we started off with an online form that we asked them to fill in. So this was kind of a bit of an icebreaker activity, but it was really interesting for us actually to hear about their current experiences with AI, what they were using, what they weren't using, etc. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment. We also were very clear to set expectations out at the start of the session. The first one was that we were not experts in this field, and we were very much learning alongside everybody else. I feel like we're kind of constantly running to keep up to date with all the new developments within AI. The other thing that we made clear was that this wasn't a comprehensive overview of all the different AI tools that were out there. It was more about the principles, really, of using AI and how it could, those tools could help specifically with the literature review. So we focused on a few tools, but really just as illustrative, not saying, these are the ones that you should or need to be using. Also, we made it clear, this is a really fast-paced environment. So we're talking about tools today, but actually next week those tools may disappear. There may be other ones that come onto the market that work better. So again, it was really about the principles behind what the tools can do for you, and really about researchers finding out what works for them and for their particular environment and instance. So we did obviously start with just a very brief context overview of AI, just in case anybody had been asleep and missed all the hype around it. And we also just very generally talked about what we felt were some of the uses of AI for the literature review process, and also some of the kind of general limitations around AI as well. But the bulk of our workshop really was this middle section here, and we split it into the kind of three main areas of doing a literature review. So around finding and summarising academic papers, around making connections between those papers and between different authors, and also then around interrogating individual articles that you find during the literature review. We tried to intersperse this with some hands-on activity. As I say, we delivered it online, but we gave the students time to just have a go and have a think about, some of the tools that they were using, and get a little bit of discussion going as well. And then we just finished with a summary, really, which was just some kind of broad guiding principles about using AI. So I just thought it might be interesting for you to see, obviously it's a very small snapshot, but how the researchers were currently using AI. So I don't know whether you can see this and how clear it is on the screen, but the majority of the students either answered that they very rarely used it or they never used it at all. However, we did have quite a large number of students who were saying, yes, we are already using AI tools quite frequently. And actually this made for a really nice balance. Sometimes when you get, differentiation in training sessions, it can be quite difficult. But actually what this meant was that the students who were using AI already were really keen to share their knowledge and what they'd learned. And then we had quite a few, I would say, very cautious researchers who were sort of, I don't really know whether AI is for me, whether it's going to help me. And so it was interesting for them to be able to express their doubts, but also to get that discussion. And I think what we went away with was that some of those students who were a bit wary about it could suddenly see some of the benefits of using some of these tools. We also asked them which tools they were currently using. Probably unsurprising that ChatGPT was the most popular, it's the one that gets the most hype. We didn't focus on ChatGPT at all because we weren't really talking about content generation and wanted to sort of steer clear of that. It was more around the kind of process of doing a literature review. So the tools that we were going to focus on, things like Elicit, ResearchRabbit, etc., you can see that some of the students had already found those and were using them, but they weren't in the majority. We also asked the students what their views were on the limitations of AI, and the words or phrases in white here were the ones that came up the most. So what they felt most strongly about was the fact that AI could give incorrect and reliable information. They all seemed very aware of the hallucinations with some AI tools, and they were very concerned about academic misconduct as well. And the other thing that they raised was around the fact that the AI-generated content could often be too basic, particularly at that research level. So what we found was that the students seemed really switched on, actually, about some of the limitations of AI and what to be, cautious about. But it would be quite interesting to ask these same questions to an undergraduate audience and see whether we got, the same kind of views. However, they did say, yes, we can see some of the benefits of using AI. So if we go around this clockwise, we've got the ones that came up the most in the form. So they could really see the benefits, particularly around some of those more administrative tasks associated with the literature review. So saving time, particularly with some of those routine tasks, being able to organise your literature, being able to get, and quickly be able to do a literature search and get an overview of the topic. But interestingly, people were also saying, well, actually, I think it's quite useful because it can help me find new ideas, it can help me, find new areas of research. So it wasn't just about the fact that it can save you time with some of that sort of like more organisational aspect. So this was the main body of the workshop, and as I say, we split it into these three areas. So when we talked about finding and summarising academic papers, we focused on a tool called Elicit. If you're not familiar with Elicit, it's quite a nice tool. What it allows you to do is it allows you to search for papers on a topic area, it will provide a summary of the key articles, and it will also create a table with different columns. So for example, there'll be a column around the main findings from each of the different papers, what the study design is. You can also create custom columns as well, so you can say, well, do these papers identify any gaps in the literature, for example? It's certainly not, perfect, but it's a really good starting point. We then moved on to making connections. So we looked at two different tools here, Research Rabbit and Connected Papers. They're quite similar, and you know they're effectively just really citation mapping tools. So it allows you to see who's cited particular papers. It allows you to see related papers, related authors. So it allows you to kind of see who else is working in the area, and they do that in quite a nice visual way with some citation maps. And then we focused on interrogating the individual papers themselves. So we looked at Bing Chat or Microsoft Copilot as it is now, and also Chat PDF as well as another tool. And what those tools, again, if you're not familiar, allow you to do is to either search or upload a particular article and then use the prompts to interrogate and ask questions of those papers. So, for example, you could ask, what are the main findings of this paper? Is this paper addressing a gap in the research? All of those kind of things. So that was kind of the main bulk of the session, and as I say, we then did allow students time to try them out, and when they were trying them out, we asked them to also reflect on, are these tools doing what you want them to do? Are they missing anything? Is there any kind of bias implications with any of the tools? Do you think they're useful, not useful, etc.? And then we came back and had a really nice discussion about some of the pros and cons of each of the different tools. So just to kind of finish off really with my reflections of doing this workshop for the first time. First of all, some of the challenges about putting it together, and one of the challenges is about keeping up to date, and knowing what content to include in the workshop. And I'll be running this again probably in the autumn term. It may actually look quite different because there'll be different tools. Things will have moved on and improved over time. So that's one of the challenges. The other challenge is around paywalls. So we tried to focus only on the tools that were free to use, or that they had at least some free elements to them. But again, that changes over time as well. So for example, when we first started looking at Elicit, it was completely free. Now it uses a sort of credit system, so you can use a certain number of credits for free, but then you need to obviously upgrade. And that's a challenge for the students and also for us as well in trying to use these tools. I was trying to use it very sparingly because I didn't want to use up my free credits. And there's a definite discussion here with AI and around sort of, that access for everybody, when things become behind a paywall. I think also our university's direction creates a bit of a challenge. I don't know what it's like in your own institutions, but our university is a little bit grey about AI at the moment. So on the one hand, it says yes, we can really see the benefits, and we know it's an employability skill. But on the other hand, they're saying, well, we don't want students to use AI. We're really concerned about the cheating, academic misconduct element as well. And that makes it quite difficult for us in the library because we can see some benefits of some of these tools, but we don't want to be advising students in the wrong way. Suddenly they're getting into trouble, or their supervisor says, I really don't want you to be using that tool, etc. So it's quite difficult. This, I think, was an easier workshop because we're not talking about content generation, so it's a little bit easier. But I feel like, if our university had a bit of a stronger direction, it would really help us. But there are lots of opportunities, so I put here AI equals printers. So normally when I do, say, a general literature searching session, I might get 10 or 12 students sign up in the first place, and then you never get 100% actually attending or joining. When we advertised this, we got 60 students, and we've got a fairly small PhD cohort. So that is kind of like unheard of really to get that many of students interested. Obviously they didn't all turn up, but we got a really good, maybe 25, 30 students joining the workshop. So it feels a little bit at the moment, if you stick AI in the title of a workshop, you're probably going to get, more interest. But it has started me thinking about where do we go with this, because do we continue, talking about AI as a separate thing, or do we try and integrate it within our existing workshops that we do? So when I talk about literature searching, I'm obviously talking more about the kind of traditional routes that we've got and traditional sources, but actually, AI is providing some different opportunities as well. So it's, how do we bring it together? I think that's the future really, and particularly as AI just gets embedded into more of the things that we're using on a day-to-day basis anyway. Definitely one of the opportunities was around the sharing of knowledge. So it was useful for me to do this workshop in the first place because it really forced me to get to grips with some of these tools. But as a librarian, I'm not using them in the real world. So actually hearing from the researchers themselves how they were using them, what they liked about them, where they felt they were deficient, etc., was really useful. And the researchers, particularly the researchers who were a bit more advanced in using AI, they were really generous with sharing their knowledge to date. So that was definitely something that we really took from the workshop, and of course we can then feed that into future workshops as we learn more. So for myself, thinking about what are the next steps, what I felt worked really well with the workshop was, having that opportunity for the students to have a go and to have that discussion. And when you're working with PhD students, they're much more likely to, share their views than perhaps with an undergraduate audience. So I think, if I was looking at my presentation slides, I'm probably going to slim them down, reduce the amount of sort of delivery in a way, and actually get them, to have a go and come back and get that discussion going. And I also really want to offer the workshop to staff and also to supervisors. We know, particularly with PhD students, that the supervisor is kind of the font of all knowledge, and that they will follow their advice. So, and again, it would be interesting to see if we get similar discussion, similar kind of pros and cons when we talk to staff and supervisors. And in fact, whether any of our staff and supervisors are using these AI tools for their own research as well. So, that's kind of my next step, really, to broaden it out to our staff at the university. So that's the end of my presentation. So happy to take any questions. I think we've got time